Linguistics is the scientific study of language. There are three aspects to this study: language form, language meaning, and language in context. The earliest activities in the description of language have been attributed to Panini, who was an early student of linguistics, with his analysis of Sanskrit in Ashtadhyayi. Linguistics analyzes human language as a system for relating sounds and meaning. Phonetics studies acoustic and articulatory properties of the production and perception of speech sounds and non-speech sounds. The study of language meaning, on the other hand, deals with how languages encode relations between entities, properties, and other aspects of the world to convey, process, and assign meaning, as well as to manage and resolve ambiguity. While the study of semantics typically concerns itself with truth conditions, pragmatics deals with how context influences meanings. Grammar is a system of rules which govern the form of the utterances in a given language. It encompasses both sound and meaning, and includes phonology, morphology, and syntax. According to him, parole is the specific utterance of speech, whereas lang refers to an abstract phenomenon that theoretically defines the principles and system of rules that govern a language. This distinction resembles the one made by Noam Chomsky between competence and performance, where competence is individuals' ideal knowledge of a language, while performance is the specific way in which it is used. The formal study of language has also led to the growth of fields like psycholinguistics, which explores the representation and function of language in the mind, neurolinguistics, which studies language processing in the brain, and language acquisition, which investigates how children and adults acquire a particular language. Linguistics also includes non-formal approaches to the study of other aspects of human language, such as social, cultural, historical and political factors. The study of cultural discourses in dialect is the domain of sociolinguistics, which looks at the relation between linguistic variation and social structures, as well as that of discourse analysis, which examines the structure of texts and conversations. Research on language through historical and evolutionary linguistics focuses on how languages change, and on the origin and growth of languages, particularly over an extended period of time. Corpus linguistics takes naturally occurring texts or films as its primary object of analysis, and studies the variation of grammatical and other features based on such corpora. Stylistics involves the study of patterns of style, within written, signed, or spoken discourse. Language documentation combines anthropological inquiry with linguistic inquiry to describe languages and their grammars. Lexicography covers the study and construction of dictionaries. Computational linguistics applies computer technology to address questions in theoretical linguistics, as well as to create applications for use in parsing, data retrieval, machine translation, and other areas. People can apply actual knowledge of a language in translation and interpreting, as well as in language education, the teaching of a second or foreign language. Policymakers work with governments to implement new plans in education and teaching which are based on linguistic research. Areas of study related to linguistics include semiotics, literary criticism, translation, and speech-language pathology. Nomenclature. Before the 20th century, the term philology, first attested in 1716, was commonly used to refer to the science of language, which was then predominantly historical in focus. Since Ferdinand de Saussures' insistence on the importance of synchronic analysis, however, this focus has shifted and the term philology is now generally used for the study of a language's grammar, history, and literary tradition, especially in the United States. Although the term linguist, in the sense of a student of language, dates from 1641, the term linguistics is first attested in 1847. It is now the common academic term in English for the scientific study of language. Today, the term linguist applies to someone who studies language or as a researcher within the field, or to someone who uses the tools of the discipline to describe and analyze specific languages. Variation and universality. While some theories on linguistics focus on the different varieties that language produces among different sections of society, others focus on the universal properties that are common to all human languages. The theory of variation therefore would elaborate on the different usages of popular languages like French and English across the globe, as well as its smaller dialects and regional permutations within their national boundaries. The theory of variation looks at the cultural stages that a particular language undergoes, and these include the following. Lexicon. The lexicon is a catalogue of words and terms that are stored in a speaker's mind. The lexicon consists of words and bound morphemes, which are words that can't stand alone, like affixes. In some analyses, compound words and certain classes of idiomatic expressions and other collocations are also considered to be part of the lexicon. Dictionaries represent attempts at listing, in alphabetical order, the lexicon of a given language. Usually, however, bound morphemes are not included. Lexicography, closely linked with the domain of semantics, is the science of mapping the words into an encyclopedia or a dictionary. The creation and addition of new words are called neologisms. It is often believed that a speaker's capacity for language lies in the quantity of words stored in the lexicon. However, this is often considered a myth by linguists. The capacity for the use of language is considered by many linguists to lie primarily in the domain of grammar, and to be linked with competence, rather than with the growth of vocabulary. Even a very small lexicon is theoretically capable of producing an infinite number of sentences. Discourse. A discourse is a way of speaking that emerges within a certain social setting and is based on a certain subject matter. A particular discourse becomes a language variety when it is used in this way for a particular purpose, and is referred to as a register. There may be certain lexical additions that are brought into play because of the expertise of the community of people within a certain domain of specialization. Registers and discourses therefore differentiate themselves through the use of vocabulary, and at times through the use of style too. People in the medical fraternity, for example, may use some medical terminology in the communication that is specialized to the field of medicine. This is often referred to as being part of the medical discourse, and so on. Dialect. A dialect is a variety of language that is characteristic of a particular group among the language speakers. The group of people who are the speakers of a dialect are usually bound to each other by social identity. This is what differentiates a dialect from a register or a discourse, where in the latter case, cultural identity does not always play a role. Dialects are speech varieties that have their own grammatical and phonological rules, linguistic features, and stylistic aspects, but have not been given an official status as a language. Dialects often move on to gain the status of a language due to political and social reasons. Differentiation amongst dialects is based upon the use of grammatical rules, syntactic rules, and stylistic features, though not always on lexical use or vocabulary. The popular saying that a language is a dialect with an army and navy is attributed as a definition formulated by Max Weinreich. Universal grammar takes into account general formal structures and features that are common to all dialects and languages, and the template of which pre-exists in the mind of an infant child. This idea is based on the theory of generative grammar and the formal school of linguistics, whose proponents include Noam Chomsky and those who follow his theory and work. We may as individuals be rather fond of our own dialect. This should not make us think, though, that it is actually any better than any other dialect. Dialects are not good or bad, nice or nasty, right or wrong, they are just different from one another, and it is the mark of a civilized society that it tolerates different dialects just as it tolerates different races. religions and sexes. Structures. Linguistic structures are pairings of meaning and form. Any particular pairing of meaning and form is a Saussurian sign. For instance, the meaning cat is represented worldwide with a wide variety of different sound patterns, movements of the hands and face, and written symbols. Linguists focusing on structure attempt to understand the rules regarding language use that native speakers know. All linguistic structures can be broken down into component parts that are combined according to conscious rules, over multiple levels of analysis. For instance, consider the structure of the word tenth on two different levels of analysis. On the level of internal word structure, the word tenth is made up of one linguistic form indicating a number and another form indicating ordinality. The rule governing the combination of these forms ensures that the ordinality marker th follows the number 10 on the level of sound structure. Structural analysis shows that the n sound in tenth is made differently from the n sound in ten spoken alone. Although most speakers of English are consciously aware of the rules governing internal structure of the word pieces of tenth, they are less often aware of the rule governing its sound structure. Linguists focused on structure find and analyze rules such as these, which govern how native speakers use language. Linguistics has many subfields concerned with particular aspects of linguistic structure. The theory that elucidates on these, as propounded by Noam Chomsky, is known as generative theory or universal grammar. These subfields range from those focused primarily on form to those focused primarily on meaning. They also run the gamut of level of analysis of language, from individual sounds, to words, to phrases, up to cultural discourse. Subfields that focus on a structure or focused study of language. Phonetics, the study of the physical properties of speech, sound production and perception. Phonology, the study of sounds as abstract elements in the speaker's mind that distinguish meaning. Morphology, the study of morphemes, or the internal structures of words and how they can be modified. Syntax, the study of how words combine to form grammatical phrases and sentences. Semantics, the study of the meaning of words and fixed word combinations, and how these combine to form the meanings of sentences. Pragmatics, the study of how utterances are used in communicative acts, and the role played by context and non-linguistic knowledge in the transmission of meaning. Discourse analysis, the analysis of language use in texts. Stylistics, the study of linguistic factors that place a discourse in context. Semiotics, the study of signs and sign processes, indication, designation, likeness, analogy, metaphor, symbolism, signification, and communication. Relativity is constructed popularly through the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Relativists believe that the structure of a particular language is capable of influencing the cognitive patterns through which a person shapes his or her worldview. Universalists believe that there are commonalities between human perception as there is in the human capacity for language, while relativists believe that this varies from language to language and person to person. While the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is an elaboration of this idea expressed through the writings of American linguists Edward Sapir and Benjamin Lee Whorf, it was Sapir's student Harry Hoyer who termed it thus. The 20th-century German linguist Leo Weisgerber also wrote extensively about the theory of relativity. Relativists argue for the case of differentiation at the level of cognition and in semantic domains. The emergence of cognitive linguistics in the 1980s also revived an interest in linguistic relativity. Thinkers like George Lakoff have argued that language reflects different cultural metaphors, while the French philosopher of language Jacques Derrida's writings have been seen to be closely associated with the relativist movement in linguistics. especially through deconstruction, and was even heavily criticized in the media at the time of his death for his theory of relativism. Stylistics is the study and interpretation of texts for aspects of their linguistic and tonal style. Stylistic analysis entails the analysis of description of particular dialects and registers used by speech communities. Stylistic features include rhetoric, diction, stress, satire, irony, dialogue, and other forms of phonetic variations. Stylistic analysis can also include the study of language in canonical works of literature, popular fiction, news, advertisements, and other forms of communication in popular culture as well. It is usually seen as a variation in communication that changes from speaker to speaker and community to community. In short, stylistics is the interpretation of text.